Draft day matters. So let's talk a little bit about this mock draft that I referenced early in the year, and I'm just going to go one through, etc. Right, and this doesn't take into account potential trades or anything like that. They're just looking at kind of the draft board, their board, and the fits. So number one, I think everybody agrees that Joe Burrow is going to be the number one pick, and I usually come into the college football season around bowl season. And certainly in the NFL season. So actually the week in between the Super Bowl, I don't pay much attention to the Pro Bowl outside of those things I talked about earlier. I start dialing in to the process really that week before the Super Bowl. So I'm starting to get more acquainted with the quarterbacks and skill players and defensive playmakers. Probably the first 3 rounds I want to be very well up to speed on. I want to know all of the running backs and wide receivers that are going to be drafted through the 7 rounds. I'm going to be looking at tape throughout the offseason. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos, so check out YouTube and all that stuff. We're going to be analyzing receivers and fits. I haven't gone to the tape yet. I haven't reached that point in the offseason, so this is kind of high level. But Joe Burrow, I will say, I kind of have my doubts on him, but I watched the college playoff season, just kind of, okay, so what's up with this Burrow? He's been vaulting up the draft boards. This dude looks good. He throws the ball well. He throws the ball into tight windows. He throws the ball into contested coverage. He's making NFL throws now. When I say that, I'm not talking about arm strength. I'm not talking about the deep out. I'm talking about he can throw the ball and throw wide receivers open. So he can make a receiver that isn't open. He can throw the ball into a very tight window because in the NFL coverage, as they always say, in college football, covered is open in the NFL. So you got to make those tight throws. Joe Burrow, I think, will be a difference maker day one in Cincinnati. When Cincinnati had adequate quarterback play in Andy Dalton, their offense was actually okay. The problem for the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion, watching them throughout the year, was Joe Mixon could never get going. And Zach Taylor, I think, as a head coach, is a flop. I think, to me, if I ran that franchise, I'm not somebody who pulls the trigger. I usually think you got to give coaches at least 3 to 4 years. But Zach Taylor, to me, is a flop. I'm not loving anything that he's going to be able to do with Cincinnati. Now, if he has better quarterback play, we'll see. I tend to think that A.J. Green will be gone, although A.J. Green has been saying all along he wants to remain a Bengal. We'll see. I think he's going to have some options. I don't even know if Cincinnati wants him back. We'll dig more into that in the offseason. But what I will say is, Joe Burrow, let's assume A.J. Green goes. I think that he will obviously have Tyler Boyd. He'll have Erickson. He'll have Auden Tate, I believe, to still throw to. Cincinnati needs a better tight ends. Uzomah's not going to get it done. Tyler Eifert, unfortunately, with all these injuries, I think he's kind of spent. I think he's serviceable, but he's not the playmaker he was when he was a Pro Bowl player and hurt himself in the Pro Bowl, unfortunately. Joe Mixon is going to make this team go. He got it going towards the end of the season, thank goodness. Cincinnati needs a lot of players on defense. In terms of draft, navigation, accumulating picks, when you have Joe Burrow and he looked as good as he looks to me, you keep that pick and you take the quarterback. I believe that's exactly what Cincinnati will do, and I think that's a great pick. The second pick, the draft Knicks say that Chase Young will be going to the Washington Redskins. Obviously, Ron Rivera has taken over the organization there. He has organizational control as well, so he's going to have a lot of say, if not complete final say, in who they draft. Ron Rivera had another defensive lineman on his team for years, in Julius Peppers in Carolina. At least I think those dates lined up. I know he had him at least at the end. Ron Rivera knows how important it is to have a solid defensive line. He's also been a part as an NFL player of a really good defense in Chicago. I do believe that Chase Young, who everybody's calling an all-decade, a once-a-decade type talent, even better graded than the Bosa brothers, I believe that Washington will pick him. If only, my only hesitation here is that Dan Snyder, who famously likes to tell people like who to draft and what to do, I don't think he's going to do that this year. I think the problem really lied more with Bruce Allen and being a yes man in that organization and a political animal rather than an NFL talent evaluator. Chase Young, I think, will be the pick. It would not shock me if Washington did something goofy. I do think that teams will try to trade up to get into position to draft one of the other quarterbacks. but I do believe Chase Young will be the pick there. I think he should be the pick there, and he will be a difference maker on this Washington Redskins team as they transition back to a 4-3 defense under Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio. I think it's a slam dunk. I do think that those first two picks will be locked. Then you get into the Lions picking a cornerback. You see the Isaiah Simmons at linebacker going to the New York Giants at number 4. You see the Chargers is the next interesting one, offensively speaking, and Justin Herbert. Or Herbert, I'll be honest, I'm not dialed in yet. People will probably laugh, but I'm serious. I take the NFL very seriously. I want to be an expert in the NFL, not everything. So I'll know his name by the end. But I believe it's Justin Herbert, Oregon. The Chargers are in a position now to move on from Phillip Rivers. I think if you have early draft position, I said this 2 years ago when the New York Giants could have drafted Sam Darnold. I think they made a mistake in taking Saquon Barkley. Now, people can argue about that. Barkley had a great rookie year, not a great second year. I think running backs you can always replace generally, but a prospect at the grade that Sam Darnold was, I think you should take him. Well, I'm using that argument here. When you can take the second best quarterback in the NFL draft, you take him if he's available. Now, I tend to think the Chargers might have to move up, and I apologize. I actually leapfrogged Miami, who's projected as well to take Tua from Alabama. Now, look, if you have the opportunity to take these guys, you should take them. I think, obviously, the Chargers, I think they definitely will. I think the Chargers are actually going to have to move up somewhere in that top 3 to 4 to draft the guy that they want. We'll see. And we'll see what happens with Tua's hip. It's a very serious injury, but, this isn't the early 90s with Bo Jackson anymore. We have, a lot of medical upgrades since the early 90s. And remember, Bo Jackson's injury wasn't even diagnosed for a few months there. So I think Tua will be okay. I hope so anyway. The game of football hopes that's the case. My only thing is I don't know that Miami is going to take him. Miami's an organization that's trying to take the New England Patriots mold. It wouldn't shock me if, and their coach defensively, they had a lot of problems on defense. Their offense was actually kind of moving the ball, even with Fitzgerald. Are they completely done with Josh Rosen yet? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm not making the argument that they should or shouldn't be done with Josh Rosen. All I'm saying is, let's say that linebacker from the Giants, let's see, he drops down to number 5. Maybe some people move up. I don't think Miami's going to move up. And I think it would be a mistake to move up. I think Miami, in their case, should be patient. They have so many holes and a lot of draft picks. Be patient, see what happens, and just take whatever falls to you. If that's a quarterback, if it's Tua, if that's who you want, great, take them. If it's a playmaking linebacker, which I think would really help Miami out, but you could say that about every position for Miami. So they could use everybody everywhere, and I think Miami, it wouldn't even shock me if Miami trades down to accumulate more draft picks, and I wouldn't fault for them for that. The Chargers, I think it's such a talented team that really quarterback day one could help them out. I think you got to stay there, and I think the Chargers, honestly, if you can be aggressive and move up, take that quarterback, I think you should. The Panthers, you get Derek Brown, defensive tackle from Auburn. There's so much talent at the top of the draft. You see these teams in that 8 to 15 range because quarterbacks tend to go so early, and a lot of times quarterbacks that probably shouldn't talent-wise go that early, you get a lot of good prospects dropping down. You get Derek Brown, defensive tackle in Auburn, to kind of add to a defense that, well, frankly, was giving up a lot of points. I think that's a really good pick. You get the Cardinals with an offensive tackle to help protect their investment there in Kyler Murray. I think that's a great one. Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. You get Javen Kinlaw out of South Carolina, defensive tackle, going to the Jaguars. I don't know. Maybe you want offensive tackle there. You can make the argument either way, but we'll see what goes on there. The Cleveland Browns is interesting. You get Becton, offensive tackle from Louisville. I think that's probably the right pick. And, again, I don't want to get into any hot water there, but then you get basically a run on offensive tackles. I'll talk about skill players now. Las Vegas, and this is always going to take me time here, the Las Vegas Raiders. It's going to take a while for that one to sink in, so I apologize if I call them Oakland. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Oklahoma, going 12. You see a little bit of in this mock draft of a run on wide receivers. You see Judy from Alabama going to the Colts. You see, where's the other one? You get Ruggs from Alabama going to the Broncos. I think those are all great fits. However, depending on what Indianapolis does in the offseason, any of these teams here, these wide receiver hungry teams, can try to sign a wide receiver and basically take themselves off the wide receiver running. I think the most important team, or I should say maybe teams to draft a wide receiver this year, I'm going to name them out. I'm going to not say New England because they never draft wide receivers well, so maybe they can run after A.J. Green or something like that. But I think the Broncos definitely need one. I think the New Orleans Saints could use another one. For some reason, it's like Michael Thomas gets like 800 receptions a year, and they can't get anything going on the other side. They need to add some kind of layer there, even if. And I think, contract aside, I think maybe the Rams waive somebody like Brandon Cooks. Maybe New Orleans could go back and bring him back to New Orleans. They need some other dynamic playmaker on the other side to make a deeper run. That plagued them. Drew Brees, gets shut down by the Minnesota Vikings. If they had maybe another playmaker, maybe they could have made that run later in the playoffs as everybody expected them to. You see the Atlanta Falcons. I'm surprised that their coach kept his job, but we'll talk about that later in the offseason. They're talking about drafting another defensive end, another pass rusher. They have had zero luck in drafting a pass rusher. I think they just at this point need to go sign somebody who's proven and stop wasting the draft pick, because they're obviously that organization there doesn't know what to do in the first round. They waste a lot of draft capital in my position. You got the Cowboys taking a cornerback. I think that's a great pick. You get the Dolphins, their second first-round pick, taking that linebacker who I was talking about before. You get their Las Vegas Raiders with their second first-round pick from the Chicago Bears, taking a linebacker. Hey, the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be interesting. They're going to have a lot to say in this draft, in my opinion. They had a nice draft if you trust all the analysts and what your eyes told you. Last year, they were eliminated from the playoffs in Week 17. They're going to be an interesting team next year. I see the Jaguars with the second first-round pick as well, taking a tight end. Depends on the offensive coordinator there, in my opinion. That could be a good pick, could be a wasted pick. You get the Eagles trying to take another wide receiver from Clemson, T. Higgins. Hey, great player. I'm not saying he's not, but I don't know. The Bills, I would like to see them take a receiver. They're also projected to take one from Colorado. I think that would be a nice fit. The Green Bay Packers desperately need a wide receiver. They're projected to take, let's see, I'm scrolling down here, projected to take a wide receiver. They're not a team that typically does that. I think Corey Davis at this season, watching what Ryan Tannehill did the last week when he got in there, I think when they finished their season, 9-4 with Tannehill at quarterback, including the playoffs. Corey Davis didn't step up. A.J. Brown looks like the stud. Corey Davis looks a little bit dud-like. Let's see what happens next year. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button just yet, but the Titans could use another receiver, but I think jumping on one in the first round is probably not the move. Let's see, the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they should seriously look at maybe a playmaking running back, but going defense certainly will not hurt, especially going pass rusher, because you should expect them to be able to score quickly. San Francisco, you can add anybody into that lineup. Baltimore, and when I say add anybody, that means they're so stacked everywhere that you're basically drafting for depth at this point anyway. The Seahawks have a lot of holes to fill. They need linebackers. They need more. This interesting one, so Miami Dolphins with their third first-round pick are projected to take DeAndre Swift from Georgia, the best running back in the draft. I don't know that the running game was the issue there. They certainly couldn't get anything going, but does that mean that every running back on their roster was crap, or does that mean that their blocking was crap? If I'm the Dolphins at that 26 spot, rather than take a running back, and of course the draft grade is going to dictate all of this. If they have like a top 5 pick and Swift is out there, going to take him. And I wouldn't argue against that. You got to trust the draft board. What I'm saying is, in terms of draft navigation, if you have a running back there, you can get dynamic running backs in the second and third round. We've seen it time in and time out. Alvin Kamara being one of them, just off the top of my head. Look, I would trade back, and I would try to accumulate an offensive line and some run blockers there so they could add a second dimension to that offense, because they couldn't get anything going in the run game, and that doesn't mean the running backs are bad. That means, to me, the offensive line was just awful. So there's some teams. The Saints are projected to take Jordan Love in this mock draft from Utah State. I don't agree with that. I don't think they'll go quarterback, because I think that Taysom Hill could be groomed to be a quarterback in a couple of years, so we'll see, but maybe they disagree. I don't know. So there's a lot of interesting things. We're going to be doing a lot of NFL draft analysis, I think, in these special editions coming forward. We're going to be doing a lot of video content, so yeah, definitely make sure to check out. But I think we'll end it there with the first round analysis. We have a Super Bowl to look forward to, San Francisco versus Kansas City. I'll be releasing a game plan this week as a special edition, so we'll take a deep dive into that game, obviously. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun in the offseason, too. I'm looking forward to really getting to know these players and watch a lot of film on these guys and write my own notes and, get the Fantasy Football Almanac, the 2020 version, up and running as well. So everybody, this week, check us out, I should say, for a lot more content. Go out, make some bets, set some daily fantasy rosters, and get paid.